Husband's been sneaking out to meet his mistress during business trips in cities I didn't even know he visited, and I know that sounds like something you'd hear in a whisper at a hair salon between foils, but this didn't arrive with a dramatic hotel receipt or lipstick on a collar. It arrived like rain through a window you thought you'd latched, a slow dampness that makes the paint bubble, and since I'm Eliza, 33, a paramedic who talks to strangers in their worst 10 minutes and keeps my voice steady while everyone else's goes to pieces, you'd think I would have clocked the sign sooner, but love is the only emergency where I misplace my kit bag. It started with a city I didn't recognize lighting up on his weather app. We were on the couch, an ordinary Tuesday night, my boots parked by the door in case the pager went off, and he lifted his phone to check the forecast for Denver. Except he wasn't going to Denver, he was going to Brisbane for a conference about supply chain visibility, which he says like it's poetry. The little carousel of cities at the top of his weather app included 3 we know, ours, his parents', mine, and then Tulsa. Tulsa like a dare. I said, "Hey, when did you get romantic about the Midwest?" He laughed and swiped past it. "Oh, that," he said, "we were speccing a warehouse out there months ago, forgot to remove it," which is the kind of sentence you don't argue with if you're trying to keep the evenings small and warm. Being a paramedic means you shuttle between 2 speeds, sirens and dishwasher hum. That night, dishwasher hum. We ate leftover laksa. He told me about some guy at work who says irregardless with bravado. I pretended not to flinch. We brushed our teeth in a choreography you only get if you've built a life. My toothpaste, his toothpaste, the dance of elbows and apology. He kissed my shoulder and the kiss was fine, which is almost worse than bad. The next breadcrumb was a postcard. People don't do postcards unless they're trying to be charming or invisible. It arrived bent, a picture of a bridge at night, the kind that looks like a zipper between 2 sides of a story. Can't stop thinking about the way the river sounded. It read in tidy, teacher-perfect cursive, no signature. Addressed to him but to our street spelled wrong, and yet it arrived because our postie is a romantic or bored or both. He tossed it onto the table with the circulars. "Marketing thing," he said, and I thought, since when does marketing smell like hotel soap and cheap pen ink? I'm not a snooper by nature. I have seen the insides of enough medicine cabinets and glove compartments to know curiosity is a magnet for the kinds of truths that don't help at 3 a.m. But I am a collector of patterns. I notice the way people hold their hands when they're pretending not to be scared. I notice when my husband's suit jacket keeps acquiring lint from a plane he swears he didn't board. He started saying back late with a casualness he had to practice. He started bringing home gifts that were too generic, like he'd gotten the brief or thoughtful wrong, candles that claimed to smell like Midnight Library, socks with tiny airplanes, a mug that says world's okayest husband as if irony was sunscreen. The map in my head tried to make it sweet. Maybe he was planning a surprise trip for our anniversary. Maybe he'd entered a contest to send me to Paris with a note that says pack something dramatic. Maybe he'd picked up a hobby hunting down the perfect croissant in every time zone and didn't want to tell me until he could present the Toblerone of buttery truth. The human brain is so generous to the people it loves, it covers their sharp edges with bubble wrap. The morning the bubble wrap ripped was a Saturday when the station was quiet and I was rearranging the trauma drawers because our new crew member has a habit of putting the tourniquets under the gauze like he's playing hide-and-seek with hemorrhage. My phone buzzed with a bank alert. Normally I skim them and move on. Paramedics are allergic to statistics unless they're vital signs, but this one had a word that didn't belong to our life: Lodestar Hotel Portland. We don't have a Portland. We have a savings account called Floorboards and a shared calendar called Where We Put Our Tired. I clicked. 2 charges, 3 nights apart. My throat did that tight click that means the body is trying to climb out of itself. I texted him, "You in Portland?" He replied instantly, "Layover. Delayed in Brisbane." Long story. Like all long stories do, it shrank. I didn't reply. I folded bandages until the neatness made me dizzy. When the pager finally went off, it was for an elderly man who'd slipped in his bathroom, and as I knelt on his bath mat and checked his pulse and asked him if he'd hit his head, I thought about tile and wet and how slippery everything is when you think you have traction. The man's wife kept apologizing for the toothpaste in the sink. "I meant to clean," she said, flustered, and I wanted to tell her the sink is the cleanest thing that will happen to any of us, that she is allowed to have a house that looks like it belongs to people who live in it. Back home, I opened the laptop. Not in a flurry, not with drama. I clicked the calendar we share like a faithful dog. Brisbane, it said, with a little airplane and a little confidence. I clicked his email. The tab I shouldn't have had logged in anymore. Better women would step away. I am not a better woman. I am a tired one who knows that when a patient tells you they didn't take anything, you still check the drawer. The inbox had receipts that behaved. The sent folder had a sweet note to me about missing my elbow laugh. He says when I really laugh, my elbows have opinions. It's true. And then, tucked in a folder called Travel Work, there were itineraries that did a small trick. Brisbane, yes, but also 3 days in between with flights to places I didn't know he'd ever spoken out loud. Portland, Tulsa, a town whose airport code looked like a typo. Print at home passes with his name spelled right. Attached were PDFs for a hotel chain I've secretly judged for having lobby art that looks like expensive headache. One of the receipts had a room service charge at 1:13 a.m. for 2 mains and 2 desserts. My brain tried to invent a scenario where he'd ordered for a coworker without a wallet. I hate my brain when it does PR for other people. There was also a photo. Not the kind you're thinking. A photo of a shoe on a hotel carpet, the toe of his sneaker, and a pair of feet across from it, painted nails in a color that looked like expensive tomatoes. The caption, "Next time bring your running shoes, I want to see if you always win." A running joke. The city in the corner tag, Portland. The username, a woman's with a little planet emoji. I clicked the profile. Private. Of course. The bio, collecting bridges. The postcard, the bridge. I sat on our dumb couch and felt every bridge I've driven an ambulance over tilt. He came home on Wednesday night, smiling narrow like a person who isn't sure if the house has changed its furniture. He hugged me in a way that used to mean good to be home and now meant do you know. I hugged him back in a way that used to mean I missed you and now meant I have inventory. We ate reheated pasta and talked about nothing. Then I asked, the way you ask a patient if their pain is a 6 or a 7, how was Portland? He didn't flinch. He didn't laugh. He did that thing good liars and good men both do when they are about to say something sharp, they soften their voice. Work meeting, he said. Met the vendor at the hotel cafe. Their lobby is a crime scene for bad art. That last part almost saved him for a second because it's the exact opinion I had typed in my head earlier. You know what's colder than a lie? A lied-over truth. I reached for the kitchen drawer where we keep the family admin, stamps, elastics, warranties for appliances we pretend to trust. I pulled out a printed copy of the Lodestar receipt I'd found in his email and slid it across the counter like a lab result. He didn't touch it. His face went pale, then determined, like when a patient you thought was about to collapse suddenly holds onto the banister with a new kind of grip. Eliza, he said, and then stopped because what word comes after your name when the world decides to collapse politely? Before you tell me a story, I said, answer what I am going to ask you like I am holding a tourniquet and I need the truth before I decide where it goes. I have said that sentence to men with blood on their shirts and to teenagers who swear they didn't swallow the pills. It works better than don't lie to me. He nodded like he was being sworn in. How many times? I asked. Since February, he said. Portland, Tulsa, once in Adelaide, twice in. He stopped himself like the next city had teeth. Who is she? I asked. We met at a conference, he said. She, we talk. It's nice. She, he wove his hands like the girl was made of strings. Is this just talk? I asked. No, he said, and if you think I want credit for the way his mouth didn't give me it's complicated, I don't. I wanted him to be a worse liar because bad lying is easier to leave. Why the cities I don't know? I asked. He looked at the sink like the answer might be stuck in the drain. Because they felt like rooms where nobody would know what I had decided to call myself, he said. I stared at him long enough for the kettle to think about boiling even though no one had touched it. I love you, he added, and I said, that's something to do, not something to say, and he shut his mouth, which is how I knew at least a small part of his brain belonged to the version of him I married. I told him to sleep on the couch. Not as punishment, as triage. I told him I'd ask him more questions in the daylight because daylight is how you keep from romanticizing your own destruction. He nodded, not like a martyr, like a person being admitted to a ward he deserves. I went to our bedroom and lay there and heard the entire house learning to breathe differently. The next day I did the practical. Paramedics do practical. You cannot hold a stranger's artery and also craft poetry. I called my friend Sarah, 40, a nurse unit manager with a spine made of sugarcane, who said, "I'm coming over with fruit and my legal brain." She arrived with grapes and the name of a couples therapist she swears saved her sister's marriage from the kind of rot that makes houses condemned. I called my sister June, who swore in 2 languages and then softened her voice and said, "Do you want me angry or helpful?" And I said both, and she said, "I'll rotate." I made a list. Not of his sins. Of my boundaries. 1. End it now with me listening. 2. No more ghost cities. 3. Passwords. 4. Therapy. 5. If I ask a question, answer without staging. 6. We tell 2 people each the truth so shame doesn't do the interior decorating. I wrote at the bottom, if I can't breathe, I walk. Men like him should not be trusted with oxygen. He came home with the face of a man who had rehearsed 40 versions of contrition and hadn't liked any of them. We sat at the table where we do taxes and birthday cards and once a very dramatic jigsaw puzzle. "Call her," I said. He did. He put it on speaker and the line rang and rang like a choice, and then a voice answered, familiar in the way strangers are when you've read their handwriting. "Hey you," she said, and his mouth trembled in a way I will forgive someday or never. He said, "I can't do this anymore. I've been lying to my wife and to you and to myself. I'm ending it." Silence. Then, "Are you ending us or ending your cowardice?" I will give her this. She had a sentence I'll be quoting in my head for a decade. "Both," he said. "Good," she said, and hung up because apparently she has dignity too. It bothered me that she did. I expected uglier villains. We found a therapist whose waiting room had soft chairs and a bowl of those smooth black stones you're supposed to hold while you say the thing that will ruin and save you. She said, "The part of you that wanted to be a different person in a different city, let's not kick him out, let's make him pay rent." She asked me what I needed first. I said, "A period of time in which his phone is the least interesting object in any room we are in." She asked him what he needed first. He said, "Permission to feel ashamed without turning it into a performance," and I had to respect that even while I wanted to staple his tongue to the desk. There were embarrassing bureaucratic things that felt like devotion, creating a shared travel file, renaming his weather cities to ours, deleting Tulsa like exorcism. He gave me passwords with the resigned generosity of a person handing over contraband. I got a STI panel because my job has taught me not to assign morality to lab work. Negative. All clear. The only infection was narrative. We set a rule: if he felt the urge to text her, he had to text me the urge, not because I wanted to police him, but because urges hate daylight. The first week, my phone vibrated with small confessions. I want to be impressive to someone who doesn't know my laundry. I want to order room service and pretend the checkout is a personality. I want to run on a treadmill and be watched by nobody. I responded with sentences the therapist taught me, like a language I didn't want to learn. "I hear you. I want to be chosen by the version of you that packs our lunches." We told our 2 people each. He told his brother, who said, "I love you, and also I will not be your alibi if you decide to ruin the good furniture," which is the kind of brother sentence every man should receive. I told Sarah and June. We did not tell our parents because parents think in decades and decades are too heavy to hand someone on a Wednesday. I met the mistress once. That's not a sentence I ever wanted to own. I didn't plan it. I was off shift in a park with a book that wasn't grabbing me, and a woman walked past with a dog that looked like it had opinions about classical music. She had the posture of someone who wants to be seen only by trees. She sat on a bench near mine and unwrapped a sandwich in the careful way that says she enjoys her own company. She looked like a person who could be anybody's ex or next. When she glanced up, our eyes did math. I saw the flicker of recognition and the immediate softness that follows a solved equation. She said, "I'm not going to make this scene-shaped," and I laughed, surprised into kindness by competency. Thank you, I said. We just Saturday. After a minute she said, still watching the dog, for what it's worth, I wanted him to be better than he was with you, not because you weren't enough, but because people should grow. I said, for what it's worth, I wanted him to be better than he was with you too. We nodded like colleagues in a difficult industry. She left a bit of her sandwich for the dog, which was illegal in that park, and made me like her more than was useful. If you want to know whether I forgave him, here's the non-cinematic answer. I forgive him between breakfast and lunch and then revoke it between lunch and dinner and apply again at bedtime. I didn't become a saint. I became a person with better boundaries and a worse tolerance for lobby art. He goes to therapy twice a week. He changed his travel role so he isn't the only guy who flies when a slide deck sneezes. He sends me photos from airports, not of beer and planes, but of the sky out the window, captioned still hours. I'm not 18, I don't swoon for sky. But my nervous system appreciates evidence. We built small, unglamorous rituals. Sunday night, 3 slots on the calendar, 1 tiny, coffee before work, 1 medium, walk without phones, 1 big, dinner that isn't saved by television. A phone basket. A rule. The bed is for sleeping, sex, reading, and saying the sentence, today I wanted to be someone else, without consequences. I started running in the mornings again, not because I want a medal, but because it's hard to catastrophize when your lungs are already occupied. When he asked to join, I said yes, and we run the slowest, crankiest laps of married life you've ever seen, 2 people being overtaken by seniors who high-five us like we're adorable. He tries to race me and I let him win once a week because charity, and the other days I smoke him because mercy has a pace. I still have days where a hotel lobby smell, that disinfectant bloom perfume, turns my appetite backwards. I still open his weather app some nights like I'm checking on a fever. I still keep a packed overnight bag in my car with a toothbrush and clean scrubs and a pair of socks, because leaving is always a skill I want to keep sharp. But there are other days, more and more of them, where the house sounds like a house again, dishwasher, kettle, the squeak of a shelf has been meaning to fix and hasn't because we are not a renovation show. We started a little herb box on the windowsill. Basil is dramatic and forgiving. Coriander bolts if you look at it wrong. Parsley minds its business and thrives. Make of that what you will. If you're here because the receipts don't match the stories and you've started to recognize airport carpet patterns in your dreams, here's the small, gritty advice I'd hand you like a blue glove. Ask in daylight. Write your questions down like a triage sheet. Insist on verbs. Pick one boundary you can enforce without witnesses. Let friends bring fruit. See a therapist who doesn't let you turn your pain into a TED Talk. If you stay, make staying active. If you go, make leaving a love letter to your future self. Either way, drink water and eat something salty. You will not win a prize for fainting beautifully. Tonight I'll put my boots by the door in case someone's worst 10 minutes need me, and he'll come home smelling like a train in his boring moisturizer, and he'll kiss my hairline and I'll decide what that kiss means today, not yesterday, not tomorrow. We'll spiral around the kitchen making something we'll pretend is a recipe. He'll try to set the table wrong and I'll fix it with that elbow laugh he says is a traffic signal. Later, if my brain wants to Google hotel carpets, I'll take it outside and show it the moon. If it still wants drama, I'll hand it a novel instead. I am a woman who can put a tourniquet on a femoral artery in the dark. I can definitely decide what my next right thing is in a kitchen that knows my feet. And if at 3 in the morning a siren pulls me from sleep and I climb into the rig and we drive through a city that holds 1,000 secret rooms, I'll let the wind slap my face awake and remember that this life is a miracle even when people behave like airports, departures, arrivals, and too many gates. I'll come home to a house that for now is a house we both deserve, climb into a bed that is currently honest, and when morning light presses its palm to my cheek I'll pick again the small brave act, to be here where my name is on the lease of my own body, where the only city I owe allegiance to is the one inside my chest, with its bridges I'm rebuilding in ordinary, unspectacular daylight.